we will continue our discourse on the 5 mental faculties. About out of 5 mental faculties, we should deal with Panya, Saddha, Viriya, Sati, Samadhi, and Panya. Panya is insight, enlightenment, wisdom, and knowledge. But before I deal with this Panya, I think I should explain to you the 5 kinds of the truth, or the 4 kinds of the truth. There are 4 kinds of truth in Buddhism. The first truth is to be realized. The second is to be abundant or removed. The third is to be experienced. The fourth is to be developed. So the first truth is called Praññeya in Pali. Praññeya means the Dhamma that must be realized by meditators. The second is called Pahadabba in Pali. Pahadabba means here the Dhamma that must be abundant or removed. Then the third is the Dhamma that must be experienced by a meditator. The third is called Satchigattabba in Pali. The Dhamma that must be experienced. The fourth is called Bhavettabba in Pali. It means the Dhamma that must be developed. So, when a meditator has realized the first truth, thoroughly realized the first truth, he will be able to remove the second truth. When he has abandoned the second truth, he can experience the third one. To experience the third truth, meditator must remove the second one. To remove the second one, he must thoroughly realize the first truth. To realize the first truth, he must develop the fourth one. In another word, if a meditator has fully developed the fourth truth, he is sure to realize the first truth. If he has realized the first truth, he is sure to abandon the second one. When he has removed the second one, he is sure to experience the third one. So, the point is the first truth, which must be thoroughly realized by the meditator. The first truth is nothing but nama and rupa, mental and physical phenomena. The second truth, which must be removed, is tanha, attachment. The third truth, which must be experienced, it is the cessation of suffering, liberation. The fourth truth that must be fully developed is the Noble Eightfold Path. So to realize the first truth, which is nama and rupa, embodiment process, psychophysical phenomena. To realize this first truth, here the first truth, why do we need to realize the first truth, nama and rupa? Because nama and rupa, embodiment processes, is the truth of suffering. All mental states are suffering. All physical phenomena are suffering. From the point of view of a meditator who wants to get rid of suffering. That's what the Buddha said. All five aggregates of grasping are suffering. All the five aggregates here means the aggregates of rupa, physical phenomena, rupa khanda. The aggregate of feeling or sensation, vedana khanda. Aggregate of perception, Sanya-khanda, aggregate of mental formations, Sankhara-khanda, and aggregate of consciousness, Vijnana-khanda. When the Buddha delivered the first sermon, setting in motion of the wheel of Dhamma, Dhammacakkappavattana discourse, he describes this is the truth of suffering. Jatipi dukkha, jarapi dukkha, vyadipi dukkha, maranampi dukkha, soka paridewa, dukkha domana supayasapi dukkha. Apiyehi sambiyogo dukkha, apiyehi vipyogo dukkha. Yam paichana lavati dampi dukkha. Sankhitena panchupadanakkhana dukkha. Jatipi dukkha, birth is a suffering. Jarapi dukkha, decay is a suffering. Vyadipi dukkha, sickness is a suffering. Maranampi dukkha, death is a suffering. Soka, worry, sadness. Prideva, lamentation. Dukkha, pain. Domanasa, grief. Upayasa, desperation. All these are also dukkha, suffering. Apiyehi sambiyoga dukkha, to associate with the unbeloved is a suffering. Piyehi vipyoga dukkha, to separate from beloved one is suffering. Yam pichana lavati dampi dukkha. What one does not get, what one wants to have is a suffering. Then eventually the Buddha summarized all this is suffering in his sentence. In short, all the five aggregates are suffering. Birth, decay, sickness, sadness, worry, pain, grief, etc. are included in the five aggregates. That's why the Buddha said, in short, all five aggregates of grasping are suffering. So when all kinds of suffering in the world is summarized, then it's five aggregates. In another word, when all kinds of suffering in the world can be summarized into two types. One is a mental suffering and the other is a physical suffering, that's all. This mental suffering and physical suffering is divided into 5. Then it becomes 5 aggregates of grasping, aggregates of physical phenomena, rupakkhanda, aggregates of feeling or sensation, vedana-khanda, aggregates of perception, sanya-khanda, aggregate of mental formations, sankhara-khanda, and aggregate of consciousness, vijnana-khanda. Here, the nama mentality consists and the 4 aggregates. Rupa, physicality, consists only a single one. Rupakkhanda aggregates of physical phenomena is only one. The other 4 are included, and namakhanda aggregates of mentality or mental suffering. Feeling or sensation, mentality. Perception is also mentality. Mental formations is also mentality. Consciousness is also mentality. These 4 aggregates are mental phenomena, nama. But in my previous talk, yesterday's talk, I explained to you briefly the consciousness and its associates. The consciousness has the characteristics of cognizing an object. It just cognizes the object. It doesn't do any more cognizing it. But there are 52 mental concomitants or mental associates that arises together with that consciousness. In accordance with the object. Not all of 52 mental states or mental concomitants or mental associate arise together with the consciousness, but some of them arise together with the consciousness dependent on the object and dependent on the mental attitude of the person. So, out of the 52 mental states, mental associates, or mental concomitants, the feeling or sensation, perception, the perception, are also included in these 52. So, of these 52 mental concomitants, the Buddha said feeling or sensation is a separate aggregate, Vedana Khanda, aggregate of a feeling or sensation. In the same way, perception is also a separate aggregate, Sanya Khanda, aggregate of a perception. Remaining 50 mental concomitants, mental associates, are called mental formations, aggregates of mental formations. Sankhara Khanda. So, an aggregate of 52 mental formations, Sankhara Khanda, context is included. Context, volition, psychic force, attention, craving, lust, greed, hatred, anger, aversion, ignorance, conceit, jealousy, embrace, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, moral shamelessness, moral fearlessness. All these mental concomitants are included in aggregate of mental formations, Sankhara Khanda. Actually, to make progress in your meditation, I need not explain you in so much detail, but I would like you to have some knowledge of these things. That's why I told you to a certain extent. Yes, these 5 aggregates, which are summarized into Nama and Rupa, mentality and physicality, are the truth of suffering, which must be thoroughly realized by a meditator. If we say straightway, we can say these body and mind are the truth of suffering, which must be thoroughly realized by us. That's why we have to watch any mental states of physical process arising as it is. All mental states and physical process have to be mindful of as they really are. The purpose is to thoroughly realize their true nature. Though we do not realize these mental states and physical process which constitute so-called a person or being, self, but they are suffering. So we may not accept the lobha, desire to be wealthy, to be a president or prime minister. We may not accept this lobha, desire is suffering, But though we do not accept that this desire is a suffering, but it's actually suffering. Why? This desire arises and passes away. When the desire arises in us abundantly or intensively, then we feel uneasy in mind as well as in the body. That's a suffering. Because of the desire to be worthy, we have to work hard day and night to earn a great deal of money. There is also suffering, both mentally and physically. But we may not accept. Man must have the desire to get a world. Because of that desire, he is suffering, both mentally and physically. Though we cannot accept it as a suffering, it's naturally it's a suffering. So, the Buddhism is realizing neither pessimism nor optimism, but it's a realizing. We must see reality as it really is. In other words, we must see suffering as it is. Or we must see suffering as suffering is. Only when we thoroughly realize any mental phenomena or physical phenomena as suffering, we want to get rid of suffering, and we find out means and ways to free from this suffering. Then also, when we search for ways and means, we find it, because the omniscient Buddha, through his personal experience, teaches us how a person can get rid of suffering, and also teaches us ways and means by which we can free from suffering. If we do not realize suffering as a suffering, we won't get rid of suffering. Then we will be struggling and suffering in the ocean of suffering. Yes, sometimes the scripture uses the word the ocean of suffering. The whole world is the ocean of suffering, both mental suffering and physical suffering. That's why the Buddha said, this is the first truth, the truth of suffering, dukkha satya, is to be thoroughly realized, praññeya. Only this dukkha satya, the truth of suffering, bodily process, is thoroughly realized. We want to free from it. Then when we want to free from it, we have to find out what causes this both mental and physical phenomena, or what is the cause of this suffering, mental and physical. Then we rightly understand the cause of suffering, mental suffering or physical suffering, is tanha, attachment. This tanha covers all the senses of greed, lust, craving, attachment, grasping, love, and so on. So when we say tanha, the attachment, we mean all these, the sense of these words: desire, lust, greed, craving, and so on. So this tanha, attachment, is the cause of suffering. We readily understand why. Because the Buddha teaches us tanha or attachment causes all kinds of suffering. So tanha or attachment is the immediate cause of suffering. Then why does the tanha arises? Why does attachment to mentality and physicality arises? What is the cause of attachment? Then the cause of attachment is ignorance. Ignorance of dukkha satya, the truth of suffering. Ignorance of both mental and physical phenomena causes attachment to arise. So attachment, tanha, is the immediate cause of suffering. The ignorance is the original cause of suffering. Then when we do not want to have suffering, or do not want to suffer, we must do away with its cause. We must eliminate its cause. What's the cause of suffering? The immediate cause is attachment. The original cause is ignorance. Only when we are able to remove the original cause, there won't arise immediate cause tanha. When this immediate cause tanha has been destroyed, there won't arise any suffering at all. Then we get free from suffering. Then how can we remove the original cause of suffering? Ignorance. Ignorance is called avijja, moha in Pali. Two words. Avijja means ignorance, moha means ignorance. But these two words are sometimes translated into delusion. Delusion is also suitable for the sense of moha, ignorance to a certain extent, or in some cases. ignorance, not understanding of the truth of suffering, mental and physical phenomena, is the original cause of suffering. Then, when we are able to replace ignorance, avidya, with vijja. Vijja is right understanding or realization. When the ignorance is replaced by vijja, right understanding and realization, then we can eliminate that original cause of suffering. Then we won't have any suffering at all. Here what we need is to realize mental and physical phenomena, or nama and rupa, or to rightly understand this dual process of mentality and physicality. Then ignorance can be removed. Then there won't arise the original cause of suffering. Then there is no original cause, there won't arise suffering at all. When we realize nama and rupa, mentality and physicality, mental phenomena and physical phenomena, we realize or we rightly understand it in two aspects. I explain to you briefly. One is sabhava lakkhana, specific or individual characteristics of nama and rupa, mental and physical phenomena. The other is general or common characteristics of nama and rupa, mental and physical phenomena. These two aspects of a Dhamma are very, very much important for a meditator to realize with deeper concentration, which is caused by continuous and constant mindfulness, which can be obtained by strenuous effort. So, the specific individual characteristics I explained to you. So, the specific individual characteristics of the four material primary material elements: earth, water, fire, and air. And also, I told you the specific characteristic of consciousness. Every mental state, every physical process has its own specific and general characteristic. Specific characteristic. But general characteristic here means the characteristics that belongs to all mental states and physical process are called general and common characteristics. They are nothing but anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Impermanence or transience, suffering or unsatisfactoriness, and impersonal nature or no soul, no self. These three characteristics are known as samanya lakkhana, general characteristics, or common characteristics of mental and physical phenomena. Every mental state has these three characteristics. Dosa has these three. Moha has these characteristics. Lobha, desire or craving, love has these characteristics. Tina Meda has these three characteristics. Uddajakukuja, restlessness and worry has these three characteristics. In this way, all mental concomitants or mental states, including consciousness, has its own specific characteristics. We meditate and know, realize, as rightly understand mental or physical phenomena. First of all, he experienced these specific characteristics. But general characteristics, anicca, dukkha, and anatta, common characteristics, impermanence, suffering, impermanent nature, are rightly understood after he has realized the first aspect, specific characteristics. But only when a meditator has rightly, clearly understood or experienced these three general characteristics, impermanent, suffering, impersonal nature of mental and physical phenomena, then his meditative experience is in progress. Vipassana, insight, means here realization or rightly understanding of these three characteristics, general or common characteristics. So it's only at the third stage of insight knowledge that meditator begins to rightly understand these three characteristics: impermanence, suffering, impersonal nature. But the impersonal nature or no soul, no self nature of mental and physical phenomena is realized from the first stage of insight knowledge, but not clearly and fully. So, here what I want to tell you is, when you observe the painful sensation, it means that you are mindful of Vedana Khanda, the aggregate of a feeling or sensation. The aggregate of a feeling or sensation is also must be thoroughly realized as it really occurs. So, when a meditator feels a painful sensation, he is lucky. He has a good opportunity to realize the true nature of a Vedana Khanda, the aggregate of a feeling or sensation. Suffering, impersonal nature. So, the pain is not to be afraid of, but to be loved. Meditator must love the pain. It's his friend. That's why he needs to love it. Why? In ancient time, about 9th century, in Sri Lanka, at that time, in Sri Lanka, Buddhism was very much flourishing. Some commentaries say at that time Sri Lanka was covered with the color of robes, and there's no place where there's no Arahant. Yes, at that time, one of a senior monk who was practicing meditation, Vipassana meditation, feels sick. His sickness is the wind inside the stomach. If it's very strongly moved, so he feels painful sensation in the stomach. He noted, observed it, but it doesn't go away. Gradually it becomes worse and worse. He also strives his best to observe it as it is, noting pain. But eventually he can't bear it. So he is moaning and rolling this side and that side on the bed with a mindfulness, crying. Then one of his disciples, who seemed to be an Arahant, I think, requested the senior monk, Venerable Sir, you are a good meditator. You need not give in this pain. You should strive to observe it. By observing the pain, realizing its true nature, you may make your progress in your meditation. Then the senior monk, who was ashamed of being requested by his disciple to go on with his practice, so he continued to note the painful sensation, pain, be impatient with it. Because he attentively observed the pain, attentively watched the pain, his mind more and more deeply concentrated on the pain. It penetrated into the pain. Then, because of a deep concentration, the inside knowledge arises and realizes unpleasantness of the pain, and then one waves of a sensation, unpleasant sensation after another, arising in passing away. As if one layer of unpleasantness comes up and then passes away. Another layer of unpleasantness comes up and passes away. In this way, he comes to realize the general characteristic of a painful sensation, arising and passing away by sensation. So it's a suffering. At that moment, because he realizes that this is just unpleasant sensation, which is ever-changing, arising and passing away. So he doesn't take the pain to be me or mine, to be a person or being. The pain is realized separate from himself. There's no location of the pain too. He lost the location of the pain. What he realizes at that moment is just unpleasant sensation. Waves of unpleasant sensation arises and then passes away. One waves after another. One layer after another. Here, when he realizes severity of unpleasant sensation, the pain, this is, he rightly understood the specific characteristics of dukkha vedana, painful sensation. Aneta buddhapa nupavana lakhana dukkha, Scripture said. The meaning is, painful sensation has as its characteristics the experience of undesirable, tangible things. So he comes to realize the specific characteristic of the pain first of all. After that, his type is best to observe the pain. Then he came to realize general characteristics, appearance and disappearance of the painful sensation, its suffering, and also it's neither a person nor a being. It is just phenomenon of a feeling or sensation. In a short time, his meditative experience goes up one stage after another, and then finally he has attained arhatship, became enlightened eventually. Then the painful sensation also has gone. He has become Arhat. When he has become Arhat, he experienced the cessation of suffering, the third truth, Nirodha Satya, the third truth which must be experienced. When he can experience the third truth, the cessation of suffering, because he has fully developed the fourth truth, the Noble Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path, as you know, Sammaditthi, right understanding. Here, I rightly understand the pain and two aspects. Sammasankappa, right thought. Sammavaca, right speech. Sammakamanta, right deed. Sammajiva, right livelihood. Abstaining from bad speech, bad deed, and bad livelihood. It means Samma, Sammavaca, Sammakamanta, Sammajiva, right speech, right deed, and right livelihood. Then he strives the best, put enough effort in the noting. That effort is a Samma Vayama. Then the mind is very sharply mindful of the pain. That mindfulness is Sammasati. Then the mind was concentrated on the painful sensation very well. The concentration is Samma Samadhi. There are 8 factors of the Noble Path is included, is observing of this pain. So, because he has fully developed this Noble Eightfold Path, he comes to realize the painful sensation, the truth of suffering. And 2 aspects. First of all, specific characteristics, then general characteristics. Here, the truth of suffering, feeling, unpleasant feeling, sensation, is thoroughly realized by himself. So he doesn't take this painful sensation to be me or my person or being. He just see it as a natural process of mentality and physicality, which are arising in personal way of changing. Then there won't arise any attachment at all, because he doesn't take the painful sensation to be a person or being. So realization of a specific characteristic and general characteristics of this painful sensation removed the attachment. Dhamma, the second truth, which must be abundant. Then, because there's no tanha, there won't arise any suffering at all. Then he experiences the cessation of suffering, the third truth, Nirodha Satya. The second truth is Samudaya Satya, the cause of suffering. The third truth is Nirodha Satya, the cessation of suffering. So here, this senior monk had a very good key to open the door of Nibbana, the truth cessation of suffering. What's that key? The key is a painful sensation. That's why I said, if a meditator has a painful sensation, he is very much fortunate to possess the best key to open the door of Nibbana. But he needs a great deal of patience so that he can observe the pain. I think you are also maybe the persons or meditators who can attain the cessation of suffering deliverance from suffering with the key of a painful sensation. Then, shall I ask you a question? Is it the pain? Is it to be loved or to be afraid of? How do you think? To be loved, so you must love it. You have lover. In every city. Yes. May all of you rightly understand how the painful sensation is helpful for you to attain the cessation of suffering and just try your best in attain Nibbana liberation.